In 1929, Prohibition had been in effect for nearly a decade, but it had not panned out exactly as the dry crusaders had envisioned.
It was the wild, wild 20s, bootleggers, cars, and a disrespect for law.
The nationwide ban on manufacturing and selling alcohol failed to stop the public's demand for it. And to fulfill that demand, an entire criminal infrastructure had sprung up. Law enforcement officials found themselves overwhelmed by the rise in illegal, widespread alcohol distribution. Finally, in a last-ditch effort to crack down, Congress passed the Increased Penalties Act, and on March 2nd, President Calvin Coolidge signed the legislation into law. The bill had been sponsored by two Republicans, Senator Wesley Jones of Washington and Representative Gail Stalker of New York. The Jones Act, as it came to be known, stipulated that for anyone who committed a major prohibition offense, including the transport, import, and export of alcohol, as well as its manufacture and sale, the penalty imposed would be a fine of up to $10,000 or imprisonment of up to 5 years, or both. Before the Jones Act, the law circumscribed by the National Prohibition Act or Volstead Act of 1919 was tough on the manufacture and sale of so-called intoxicating liquor, but lenient on transport, import, and export. But even the new law couldn't stop organized crime, led by well-known gangsters like Al Capone. Bootleggers already had control of the alcohol market, and there was still money to be made in racketeering. Meanwhile, much of the nation was fed up with the alcohol ban, and a political movement against prohibition gained momentum. More than 20,000 people took part in this mass demand for its repeal in Newark, New Jersey. Even business interests who had helped to enact prohibition later fought to repeal it. John D. Rockefeller Jr., who openly supported temperance, made a stunning reversal in June of 1932 with an open letter declaring prohibition to be a failure.
When the 18th Amendment was passed, I earnestly hoped, with a host of advocates of temperance, that it would be generally supported by public opinion, that this has not been the result, but rather that drinking generally has increased, that the speakeasy has replaced the saloon, not only unit for unit, but probably twofold, if not threefold, that a vast army of lawbreakers has been recruited and financed on a colossal scale.
Finally, Congress proposed the 21st Amendment ending prohibition on February 20th, 1933. It was the only amendment to be ratified by state conventions rather than state legislatures.
The decisive vote of the 36th state against prohibition is happy news for the grain raisers of the United States and for many others throughout the land. With an eye on December 5th, work is being rushed in distilleries and bottling works. Thousands are being called back to work in plants of allied industries. At least 500,000 new jobs are predicted as the result of repeal. From keg and barrel factories, perhaps the most closely allied line, immediate benefits from repeal extend into almost every line of business and commerce. Oh, there'll be no more scenes such as this. Barrel after barrel of prize whiskeys destroyed by government agents. It's going to be a cold winter for the barrel busters.
Nearly 14 years after Prohibition was enacted, the Wet Crusaders had their day.
Here's the big moment. Acting Secretary of State William Phillips is signing the 21st Amendment, and Prohibition is repealed.